Many Christians are anticipating the rapture, an event in which all who belong to Jesus are collectively taken up from the earth to heaven. Theories about the rapture have been spread in a variety of ways, not least in the wildly popular Left Behind series of books by Tim LaHaye and Jerry Jenkins. But what if I told you that one of the key texts, in fact the very text from which the series of books takes its name, teaches that it's good to be left behind, and that there's really no such thing as the rapture? I'm Dr. Matt O'Reilly of OrthodoxyForEveryone.com. Stick around, we'll take a look at that text and consider whether or not the rapture is truly a biblical idea. If you are a proponent of rapture theories, one of the key texts that you will turn to often first is in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 24. And it's a text in which Jesus compares his coming to the flood in Noah's days. He says that the coming of the Son of Man, and when he talks about the coming of the Son of Man, there is some debate over whether he's talking about the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, which happened in 70 AD, or whether he's talking about the second coming, but we'll leave that to the side for the time being. He says, the coming of the Son of Man will be like it was in the days of Noah. You've got Noah and his family, and they are taken into the ark by God, and they are preserved through the flood, and then you've got everyone else who is partying and living it up, and they are taken away in the flood. Jesus says that's analogous to how it will be at his coming. Two men will be walking in a field, one will be taken, the other will be left. Two women will be working at a grindstone, one will be taken, the other will be left. And then Jesus says, so be watchful, because you don't know when the Son of Man will come. So you've got this text, and the whole thing depends on an analogy. Well, folks who presuppose a rapture read this, and they read two men walking, one's taken, the other's left. Obviously, that's about the rapture. You don't want to be left behind. You want to get raptured away into heaven. The trouble is that that interpretation does not stand up to rigorous interpretation of this passage. It doesn't fit the analogy the way Jesus explains it. So here's how it works. Jesus says, when Noah built his ark and a great flood came, there are two kinds of people in the world. There's Noah and his family. They were preserved by God through that judgment, and they were left behind when the flood was over. The other group of folks are the wicked and the unrighteous, who are partying and living it up and giving no regard for what God cared about and what God had for them. And the flood came and took them away. They were swept away in the waters of the flood. So in that setting, Noah and his family are left behind. They are saved through judgment, and the unrighteous are taken away in the flood. They are taken in judgment. They are destroyed in judgment. The second part of the analogy, Jesus says, when the Son of Man comes, you'll have these two men, and one of them will be taken and the other one will be left. Well, how does the analogy work out? Well, in the flood narrative, the way Jesus is using it, the one who is taken in judgment, not taken to heaven in a rapture, taken in judgment as an expression of God's judgment against that person and their participation in a world that stands in opposition to God. The one who is left is the one who is preserved by God through that period of judgment. And so you have the one who is taken is the one you don't want to be, who doesn't survive that period of judgment. And the one who's left behind is the person you do want to be, because they are preserved through that period of judgment, just like Noah and his family. The righteous will be left behind after the judgment is complete, and the unrighteous will be taken away. It's good to be left behind. The analogy works the same way in the second bit, where you have two women who are working at a grindstone. One is taken, one is left. Again, it's good to be left behind, just like it was in the days of Noah. The analogy works exactly the same way in both instances. And so Jesus says, so be watchful, Be attentive. You don't know when the Son of Man will come. So this is not about any sort of rapture theory. It's not about an escape from this world to heaven. Instead, it's about being faithful and being attentive and honoring Jesus and anticipating his coming. So if you follow the logic in the text of Matthew 24:36 through 42, the inescapable conclusion, in my mind this is incontrovertible. It's just how this passage works. If you follow the logic of the text, the inescapable conclusion is that it's good to be left behind, and that this verse has nothing to do with any sort of rapture of the church from earth to heaven. I'm Dr. Matt O'Reilly of OrthodoxyForEveryone.com. Thanks for watching. Be sure to give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video and subscribe. Click the bell to receive notifications of new content.